Hi, I'm Amy Abernathy, and I'm delighted to be with you, Rare Cancers Australia and the CanForum. Before we start our conversation, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an oncologist by background. I did my training at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, in the United States, and then I did my PhD at Flinders University. My area of focus was evidence-based medicine. For my entire career, I've been focused on the question of how do we get treatments that work to cancer patients and others that need them as quickly as possible. I ran the cancer care research program at Duke. I was a full professor of medicine, and then also ran the Center for Learning Healthcare and the Duke Clinical Research Institute. During that time, we were focused on how do we leverage data and technology and the best that software has to offer in order to solve that conundrum, getting treatments to patients as quickly as possible. In 2014, I realized that I also needed to help motivate the venture capital and software communities to help solve this problem, and then joined a company in New York City called Flatiron Health, where we worked on how do we build software and how do we clean up cancer data in order to put it to use to solve that critical problem, answering what works for whom and when in the cancer space and making sure patients get the treatments that they need. After I left Flatiron in 2019, I joined the United States Food and Drug Administration as the Principal Deputy Commissioner, and I also was the Chief Information Officer. I left FDA in April of this year, where I really left with the core purpose of going back to that need of how do we quickly understand what works for whom and when. In July of 2021, I joined a company in South San Francisco called Verily. This is an alphabet company, and my job is president of the clinical studies platforms area of the business. Essentially, I am now working again in this area of how do we leverage data, technology, science, and clinical know-how to find out what works for whom and when and get it to the people who need them. Given that background, I am delighted to join you in today's conversation with Rare Cancers Australia, asking the question, how can we leverage real-world data in service of rare cancers in Australia and beyond? As I was preparing my notes for today's conversation, I reflected on somebody I met in about 2008. He was a young man with chordoma. And not only did he have the illness, he was working in the lab trying to find a treatment for his disease. He also started the Chordoma Foundation and also a blueprint to how to address the critical question of rare cancers. I learned so many things from Josh, but one of the things I learned about is how do we leverage data? How do we leverage organized communities, activated people to address critical questions in the rare disease and rare cancer community? And that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. First of all, let's just step back and talk about real-world data, what it is. Often you hear about this concept of real-world evidence, but real-world evidence stems from the underlying data sets. Essentially, real-world evidence is the analysis of underlying data sets that are real-world data sets. So what are real-world data sets? This is information gathered from the normal course of clinical care, from the normal things that you do every day. Information gathered outside of the confines of the traditional clinical trial setting. It includes, for example, information from electronic health records, information from administrative claims, such as Medicare information from, for example, environmental data sets or national registries. It also it includes information that might be generated during the course of your daily life, such as the sensor in your watch has information about how many steps you take as a part of your normal course of activity. And this information can be gathered together, compiled, and organized in a way that now becomes usable to understand some critical kinds of questions. What are the kinds of questions that real-world data and real-world evidence can help us with? For example, it can help to define the natural history of your disease. For example, what do patients with chordoma experience, and how do their lives unfold across time? It can help with study planning, such as what is the right way to think about allocating a person to a new treatment program and studying it across time. What are the right endpoints? How frequently should a person have study visits to evaluate those endpoints, et cetera? Can also be used to do treatment comparisons. For example, real-world data sets that look at a person or a group of people who've been exposed to treatment A versus treatment B, and how did they fare across time? We can use real-world data and real-world evidence for long-term follow-up. So perhaps a person who's been on a clinical research study and now we follow them across time, as well as a way of defining historical controls so that in some studies, we can use real-world data to fill in the information of the as compared to side of the treatment and analysis, and do so in a way that helps us understand how does a new treatment compare to how people have historically done in the past. Why is this particularly important to the rare cancer community? So oftentimes there's limitations in progress in the rare cancer space because of inadequate historical information, too few people who can be enrolled in clinical trials, just not enough data to answer the question. Further, we live in an interesting zone where the treatments that are becoming available oftentimes may have impact that shows up very late, many years, if not decades after the initial treatment, especially, for example, cell and gene therapies. And so now being able to leverage real-world data provides us the ability to follow people for a very long period of time after the formal clinical trial ends to be able to understand how do they do, safety concerns, whether or not there needs to be changes to the sequence of treatments or how to plan for new treatments that become available. These are very important capabilities that the rare cancer community is going to need as we think about the treatments becoming available going forward. Now, you've probably noticed that the real-world data and real-world evidence space has been heating up a lot. Some of this is due to regulatory priorities, policy priorities. At least in the United States, we've had several pieces of legislation that have highlighted the importance of leveraging all data to understand what works for whom and when. Most notably, the 21st Century Cures Act was passed in December of 2016. But that being said, it's one thing to say we want to leverage all available data, another thing to be able to do it. And I think one of the reasons why this space is heating up so much and people are paying so much attention is because of new technical capabilities that make it possible. Some of it is readily seen around you. For example, the availability of electronic health records that start to compile a lot of information about healthcare into one place. But as you know, electronic health records have lots of downsides. Not only the downsides that are involved in day-to-day care, such as taking time away from your doctor, but often the data are messy, there's big gaps in the story, or data are difficult to combine. And so now we see new technical capabilities that not only make electronic health records possible, but allow us to clean up electronic health record data. And as those capabilities become more the norm, I think you're going to see that electronic health record data is going to be a key feature of real-world data sets in the future. What are other reasons why the real-world data space is heating up? Well, now that we have electronic health record data as sort of like the data backbone, you can think about the next steps that need to happen. For example, data linkage, the organization and coordination between multiple different types of data sets. As an example, electronic health record data that now gets linked to or combined with information from, for example, the genomics detail of a potential tumor sample or other information such as sensor data from your watch. So this ability to link and coordinate data is a part of our future. We also have better analytic capabilities. Some of this is the sophistication of artificial intelligence and machine learning, but a lot of it is just good old-fashioned better statistics. Cleaner data, better statistics lead to more confident and reliable output, and that's going to be one of the critical needs in the real-world data space. There's also better interaction with real people where they are. I mentioned before the sensor in your watch and the ability to understand, for example, the steps that you take, but also, for example, interaction via your smartphone to be able to describe the symptoms you're experiencing every day, what matters to you, or questions that you have. Other technical capabilities, such as the ability to store and organize data in the cloud, make this landscape of real-world data and the leveraging of data for the purposes of clinical evidence generation, something that I think we're going to see more and more of. Importantly, we've got to pay attention to some critical features. In this world, privacy matters a lot, and it should. And so we need to make sure that the way this work is being done keeps privacy at the forefront. And I think that the Rare Cancers Australia community is going to be an important place to give voice to what does keeping privacy at the forefront mean. Similarly, there are some bad and nefarious actors out there. And so cybersecurity and paying attention to how to keep these data sets safe is going to be a critical part of the future as well. So what are some of the advantages in the rare cancer community for using real-world data? How can you as a community leverage these kind of data sets and these technical capabilities going forward? So one advantage is that you're organized. So an organization brings voice to the issues that worry you. For example, specific neurologic problems, problems with sleep and the importance of making sure that sleep information is incorporated into your data set. Maybe you're worried about genetic risk. Being able to be organized and give voice to what you need to know is going to be important. Organization also brings together coordinated capabilities. So for example, organized tissue registries, real-world data registries like we've just talked about. Organization ensures that you can collect special data that matters, like symptom data, quality of life data, ability to return to work if that's something that matters to you. An organization gives you voice, voice with government, voice with each other, etc. So how can you leverage your organization in the landscape of real-world data? First, you can coordinate participation in real-world data registries. Coordinate participation of organizing the data in ways that now create continuous data infrastructure that starts to create a core of information to be able to better understand the natural history of your disease, to better plan clinical trials and studies for the future, to be able to think about questions such as treatment A versus treatment B or historical controls. You can coordinate, generate real-world data registries around rare diseases and rare cancers, and then be able to plan for that kind of future. You should work together with tech and data companies to build the infrastructure, real-world data infrastructure, linked tissue repositories, and attention to privacy in a way that matters to you. You should make sure that the voice of what you need is clear and you leverage your organization to give that voice even a more amplified message and point of view. The other thing that you should do is coordinate quickly on lessons learned. And you can do that in two ways. First of all, as you learn new information from your real-world data sets about your disease, about treatments that work, being able to quickly get that information back to your rare cancer community is going to be very important. The other part of the coordination is across the rare cancer community. As one rare cancer area starts to learn what's working for your special disease, teach others how to leverage those same kind of capabilities in other rare cancer areas. That's what the Chordoma Foundation and Josh taught me. Not only did he spend time in the lab and spend time thinking about how to take care of his disease, chordoma, he went back and said, how do I build a blueprint so that others with rare cancer can do the same thing? And I think your organization together gives you that opportunity to teach each other and learn quickly because we have no time to waste. With that, I celebrate the work that you do. I say thank you for having me here with you today. And I look forward to helping you make important progress in the future.